Welcome to this edition of the Your Weekly Dose of Nonprofit Podcast, the podcast that delivers actionable items you can implement at your organization right away. I'm your host, Ephraim Gopin of 1832 Communications. Today, I'm really happy to have with us the wonderfully talented Julie Cooper. Julie, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Ephraim?
I'm doing great, thanks. Let's introduce you to our listeners, watchers, and readers. Julie is a copywriter specializing in direct response fundraising writing. She teams with her nonprofit clients to write and consult on their donor communication so they can stop worrying about fundraising and focus on their good work. Having held various positions in organizations, including president of a foundation and board chairperson, Julie knows the fundraising challenges nonprofits face. Julie's passion is to help nonprofits stabilize, optimize, and expand their revenue sources so they can thrive. She is principal of JB Cooper LLC, and you can learn more about her at fundraisingwriting.com. In today's episode, we're going to discuss fundraising copywriting. Let's dive right in. Julie, what's the biggest mistake nonprofits make in their copywriting when talking to or addressing donors?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. And I think the biggest mistake they make when addressing donors is they write at the donor, not for the donor. They don't necessarily realize that the message should be all about how the donor can make a difference with their gift today. And unfortunately, nonprofits somehow forget to include the donor in the conversation. It's all one-sided, very organization-centric instead of like donor-focused. It's kind of like this. Have you ever had, coffee or lunch with someone, and then at the end of your time together, you seem to know everything about that person because they talked about themselves, but they know very little about you because they didn't include you in the conversation. And when that happens, that's just disappointing and you feel like unimportant. It's like that. In our fundraising messages, we need to include the donor and their interests from the very beginning. Because fundraising writing is a conversation with the donor, telling the donor the great things that they will do when they make a gift. Your fundraising writing isn't aimed to please internal organizations, internal audiences at your organization. Like, you're not there to please your boss or the board or the program staff. No, your job is aimed to get the donor and nobody else to understand the problem clearly and act right away. So instead of telling the donor all about your processes and your programs, trying to wow them with all of the good things you do and all the work you do. Instead of doing that, you want to jump into the conversation that your donor is already having in their mind about their desire to do more good in the world. So your fundraising message essentially is how the donor goes from ordinary guy to hero guy with their gift to your organization. So I think really talking at the donor instead of for the donor and including them in the conversation is probably the biggest mistake I see.
Nonprofit pros, take note. That's a big one. Today's actionable item. Please share with us 3 elements every piece of material we send donors must contain in order to build the case for support.
Okay, great. So 3 elements that are absolutely crucial in your fundraising communications are the problem, the offer, and the activation. So first you want to show your donor a problem that is focused, it's urgent, and it's solvable. And then you need to affirm to them that they are the solution to the problem. Only they can make this wrong right. And then second, you want to propose an offer. You explain to the donor how they will solve the problem. And the offer needs to be specific. It needs to show impact. It needs to be expressed with a cost if possible, and show that it's a good value. I mean, we all like a good deal, right? And so do our donors. And what we want the donor to know most of all is that the value that comes out of their donation is greater than the cost of it to them. So essentially, the offer is irresistible. And then the third element that's included is the activation part. You want to mobilize your donor to act. You tell them what to do next and how to do it. You make it super, super easy for the donor to act at once. And in fundraising writing, we never assume that the donor knows what to do next. In fact, we never allow the donor to finish our thoughts. We always complete our thoughts with crystal clear language. And so what do I mean by that? We must call them to action. We tell them to click the link, or we tell them to complete the reply form in the envelope. We tell them what their donation will immediately go to work helping to solve. And we remind them that their action is urgent, and we ask for the gift again. So, I mean, so basically to sum up those three, we present a problem that the donor can solve, and then we make the donor an irresistible offer that shows their soon-to-be impact in action. And then finally, we call them to action. We tell them exactly how to make that gift and how to make that gift right now.
That is a perfect 3-point plan. Excellent. On your website, fundraisingwriting.com, you have an email welcome series ebook. What's a welcome series, and why is it so important to retaining email subscribers over time?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you. So an email welcome series is an automated series of emails that people received after taking an initial action on a website. And typically that action is subscribing to an email newsletter. And the purpose of this series is to welcome, to build trust, and to encourage the subscriber to take the natural next steps with your nonprofit. So it's really the getting to know you phase of the relationship. And it should end with a small first donation. So basically the subscriber signs up, and the subscriber thinks that they might possibly, sort of, maybe, perhaps like you, but they're not sure. They took that first step in the relationship by opting into your email list and receive your newsletters. Now you need to woo them. So the ball's in your court. And what I like to say is, it's a welcome series is like a first date. On the first date, you would never think of, asking your date to marry you, because that action is out of order and creepy. So know that, the marriage proposal comes much later. But during that date, that first date, you might, tell a story about your childhood or describe what you do in your job, like get to know each other, see if you share the same values. And the same is true with an email welcome series. So asking a new subscriber to donate right away or to do anything significant right away is like asking them to marry you on the first date. So that's why each email in the welcome series serves to nurture that relationship between you and the new subscriber, one step at a time.
Excellent. What do you need, materials-wise, from your nonprofit clients before you can sit down and begin writing copy for them?
Yeah. So we need to complete a creative brief. So either the client will provide me one, or I would work with them to complete it. So basically a creative brief is a project plan. It's the compass that everyone who's working on a project needs to navigate all of the pieces. And you make sure that everyone is on the same page. And, this takes some time at the beginning, but it certainly saves time at the end. And sometimes creative briefs are only a few pages. And then other times, like a project I was doing last week, it was 12 pages. long, and it included many links to articles that I needed to read and familiarize myself with. So a lot of work goes into the behind the scenes research before the writing even starts. Um, and so inside the creative brief, there's information like project objectives and goals and deadlines. Also, important elements like what will be the exact deliverables and in what forms. And, is it direct mail only, or will it be integrated into an email campaign? And what about social media? So, and then what's really important too is the audience. You need to know who you're speaking to. What are their demographics? What are their psychographics? What keeps them up at night? What are their interests? What do they do in their free time? All of this helps me get into the mind of the donors and write better. And the creative brief also details what kind of segmentations we'll do, if any. Major donors, mass donors, and what are those segmentations? And then, another important part, something that we talked about, a couple questions ago was, what is the problem that we're asking the donor to solve? We got to make sure we identify that very clearly. And what will the offer be? And what's the call to action? So, it's a very detailed document, but definitely a much needed one.
Planning in advance creates success.
For sure.
Yeah, you're a very talented copywriter. Is there one type of fundraising collateral you enjoy writing more than others?
Thank you. That's nice of you to say. I think my favorite part is taking a long piece of copy that I've written and then adapting it, for example, into like an email series or a donation landing page or copy for Facebook posts. Sometimes getting that long initial form copy can be emotionally draining. So taking that big rock piece and then breaking it down and adapting it into other, shapes and sizes is really fun and rewarding. And I also love choosing the photos and getting the design elements just right.
Excellent. I like taking long content and breaking it down into what I call bite-sized pieces.
Yes, for sure.
So let's move on to the lightning round and learn more about Julie. What got you started on your nonprofit career path?
So years ago, I was just kind of looking for more community connection and really just kind of more meaning in my life. And so I decided to help out a local nonprofit with their marketing. And that's kind of where it all started. I completely fell head over heels for the marketing and the fundraising side of a nonprofit's work. Yeah, that's where it all began for me.
Excellent. If there's one thing in the nonprofit world you could shake up, what would it be?
Yeah, I think I would like more people to fully embrace the concept that fundraising is about growing money and not preserving it. And you have to strategically spend money on fundraising in order to make more money so that you can spend more money on the great programs and do more good. It's definitely an important mind shift for organizations if they want to grow.
Spend a buck to make a buck.
Yeah.
What's a favorite book or story from your childhood?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I've always been upbeat, even as a child, but I do remember loving and memorizing the book. Maybe you're familiar with it, Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day by Judith Vorst. And I loved that book. And, this was back in like the early 1980s, when there was like nothing good on TV on Sunday, afternoon. So I just remember memorizing picture books. And this one in particular, I just loved.
I totally remember that book. Yes. Tell me about a mentor and how they helped move your career forward.
Well, right after college, I went to work for my parents' company, and it was a sales agency in the industrial tools market. And my dad really taught me a lot about how to sell. how to go to market, how to treat customers. He taught me how to close the deal. It's not exact apples to apples, sales to fundraising, of course, but much of it does transfer well over into my work and how I view donors. So I guess I'd say my dear old dad really helped me move my career forward.
That's awesome. Favorite city or country to visit and tour?
I love Tucson, Arizona. So my husband and I just have our eye on it for possibly moving there in the future eventually. I love the desert. I love the saguaros, the animals, the people, the culture, the sunsets, everything. Even the heat's okay.
Yes, it does get quite hot down in that part of the country. Let's turn the table. You asked me a surprise question. I have no idea what's coming. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I do have a question. I have it written down. Okay, so you have been sending out a daily newsletter for quite some time now. And which, by the way, it's always amazing. It's so informative. It gives me a chuckle or two every day. I just love it. And then now, of course, you do this podcast. So you do a lot of outreach to nonprofits. And so tell me something that you've learned from doing either the daily newsletter or this podcast that you can teach a nonprofit about acquiring or engaging donors better so that they can do more good.
Consistency. I think there's a lot of things I've learned over the last year plus doing, and thank you for mentioning both the podcast and the newsletter. There's a lot of things I've learned from doing the newsletter. It's 4 times a week, and it was an idea that was brewing in my head for 3+ years before I started it. And then I have to do it every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and it has to go out. And I have to find 4 articles, and there's an opening article which has nothing to do necessarily with the nonprofit world, and that chuckle at the bottom. So there's a sense of consistency. And when I talk to nonprofits, if you have an email marketing program, sending it out once every now and then. Some of them tell me, well, we send it out now and then. I go, why would your donor or subscriber be expecting it? It's going to come out of the blue. They're not going to be expecting it. They have a full overflowing inbox. You have to be consistent. If it's every month, then it's every month. It's every week, every 2 weeks, whatever it is. But coming up with a sense of consistency so they are anticipating it. I know now, based on the feedback I've gotten, certainly on the newsletter, people are anticipating it in the morning. And I've gotten the feedback of it's the first thing I read in the morning because I know it's going to be there when I wake up. So that sense of consistency means that your subscribers know what's coming. And then they, this is the big challenge. And you know this from copywriting, is the challenge of having to rise to the challenge of good copy and making it interesting, something they want to open on a consistent basis. So it's not just that it's going to show up in their inbox, but now you really have to bring your A game. Every single day, I do 4 times a week, is to bring your A game. And that's also tough, but it's something to learn that nonprofits can learn that, if you're going to be sending out your email once a month, once a week, whatever it is, you better bring your A game, and have it all mapped out and ready to go so your subscribers, they read. And then, as you said, there's an activation. Click on something, do this, subscribe, donate, whatever you want them to do, but make sure you have it mapped out in advance. So I think that's what I've learned so far.
I love that. That's a great answer. I thank you, because I learned from that too. Thanks. Yeah, I need to be more consistent. So thank you.
Well, it's, I think that's the toughest part of it is knowing, but I've kind of put it into motion that every day I know tomorrow there's a newsletter, and so get it done, because if I miss a day, I will hear from subscribers, hey, where is it? So
awesome. Yeah. Isn't that great?
Yes, it is actually. Now that I've gotten to that point, that is, it's not burdensome.
They miss you.
They do
miss you if you're gone. That's awesome.
That's a nice thing to know. I mean, they don't miss me. They miss the newsletter. Let's be honest. But it's good to know. Thank you so much, Julie, for appearing on the podcast today. I really, really appreciate it. You can learn more about Julie at fundraisingwriting.com, where she shares her smarts via ebooks you can download, and then you can go implement her methods at your organization today. Again, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
An absolute pleasure. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, bye.